Does weight loss get harder as you get older?
A lot of people get fixated on the physical weight loss, but there's like emotional and mental weight loss.
I definitely can't lose weight like I could years ago. Must be my metabolism.
Like the best treatment for menopausal symptoms is going to be, lifestyle changes.
It's that perpetual dieting thing that always ends up happening. They're either on a diet or off a diet.
It is the foundation of how we move and how we operate and function in the world.
There's so much more on your plate as you get
And
older.
I think it's because a lot of people are in fight or flight so much that they don't even realize that they're tired and they need to relax.
Like the master key to health. Like
There's not trigger foods. You were triggered and food is yours.
I was working out when I should have been working in, and your metabolism hasn't slowed down. You have. Hey there, welcome to the Future Fitness Lifestyle. If you're passionate about staying fit, healthy, and mentally sharp, you're in the right place. I'm your host, Matt Cooney, and each week we dive into the latest trends, expert insights, and actionable tips to help you take your fitness, nutrition, and mental well-being to the next level. Ready to level up your health and fitness? Let's jump in and get started. Welcome back, everybody, to another episode of the Future Fitness Lifestyle Podcast. Today we have another full house. The whole team is here. How is everybody doing today?
Good.
All good. All good.
Good. I just trained legs this morning, so I'm feeling energetic.
Bro, I have a question for you first. Have you used your pepper spray yet?
No, I have not. Thank God.
God. That is good to know. If you listen to last week's podcast, you know why I was asking that. But we'll move on from there because we don't want to get stuck on pepper spray. Tommy, I have a question for you. How many days are you actually off caffeine now?
25 days that day.
You are nearly there.
And I am, but the first is on a Tuesday, and I feel like I don't want to have my first coffee on a Tuesday, so I'm going to push it out until the Saturday.
Nice. You love your weekend coffee. Question for you though. Have you been talking about this morning? How's your energy? Is it better, worse, or no different?
I think my energy overall, I don't think has been impacted too much. It's just that particular like moments in the day where I feel like a little tired and I'm like, oh, I'd love a coffee. But then kind of once I kind of break past that barrier, I'm actually okay. So I'm.
How about your sleep? Is your sleep better?
If I was to look back in the last 25 days of my sleep, I would say yes. Actually, yes, definitely probably has been an improvement without any stimulus.
What's your training like first thing in the morning without that morning coffee?
That's hard. That is challenging. I miss the kind of caffeine buzz beforehand. But it's also a good thing too, because anytime I used to train legs in the morning and have caffeine, I used to feel really sick after like the third or fourth exercise. And no, I don't have that experience. So that's after teaching me a lesson.
Yeah. Yeah, because me and you were talking about this morning. We've seen a few people being like how they've given up caffeine and their energy's like through the roof. So that's why I was like wondering. But yeah, so basically me and you, Tommy, have completely different amounts of caffeine in our system right now. And on the end of the spectrum.
Yeah.
And that's why the listeners will know. That's why you sound like you're chilled out. You're in a tiki bar in Mexico type of vibes. And I sound like I'm about to jump off a plane.
I actually do feel very relaxed, I have to say.
If you had the amount of caffeine I did, you wouldn't. Right, let's get into today's episode. So, because we're not going to talk about coffee all day, which I definitely would. Sharon, do you want to introduce today's topic?
Today's topic is, does weight loss get harder as you get older?
And when you say that, what's your first thoughts or impact?
When you first kind of said this is what we were going to be talking about, it reminded me of like things that I would have learned actually when I was in college, and it was talking about how different life is now compared to how it was before. So for people as they're getting older now, it would be very different to years ago. Like people having children that little bit older, maybe not living as close to their family, being under more kind of pressure and stuff with work. And it also made me think about like how my life is so different to when I was younger, in terms of like my job. You know, it would have been, I know it is quite active now, but as I'm getting older, it's not as active as what it would have been. Also, I suppose for me, as I've got older, I think it has shifted in terms of how I do it. You know, so it does take that a little bit longer. When you're younger, you can do different approaches, I think, and they don't maybe impact you as much as what they do when maybe you have small kids, you have a job you need to focus on, you have different lifestyle.
And I think you said it's like priorities obviously change as you get older. Like, you know, when you're in your 20s, your priority is like what you earn out the weekend. When you get that little bit older again, it's like kids, job, family. There's so many life changes, you know. But I think one kind of avenue I wanted to go down here was just even to start is more about the metabolism. So something you'll often hear people say is like, my metabolism's slowed down. Or, yeah, I definitely can't lose weight like I could years ago. Must be my metabolism. My metabolism's damaged. Whatever things loads of different things based around this. And there's a lot of misconceptions and I would say nearly myths around this. And it's funny because I often have conversation with people who will say this. They'll be like, yeah, definitely something wrong with my metabolism. And within 10 minutes of the conversation, I'm like, I have a list of at least 10 things that we need that have nothing to do with your metabolism that are maybe the issue here. You know, I think sometimes people can use it as a get out of jail free card type of thing. It's like, oh yeah, don't worry about all this stuff. It's like, my metabolism definitely, you know.
I think that's it. But a lot of people as well use the excuse of when they hit a certain age, like, you know, oh, I'm in my 30s now. They're expected to have like bad back pain and all these problems, and they almost tell themselves this story to like justify why they should slow down.
I think there's many different factors that can influence that in like both a positive and a negative way. You know, lifestyle obviously being one of the biggest ones, but when I hear that, for me, it's like the older you get, the wiser you get, the more experienced you are. So you've more knowledge, you've learned more lessons in life. Hopefully, you are more in tune to making better decisions when it comes to the choices that you have in life. And I think that's where like experience plays such a vital part in life. You know, it's like if you have all this knowledge gained up and you have all this knowledge, and in today's world, like it is so easy now to absorb and gain knowledge compared to like 10, 20 years ago. And with all that knowledge, you know, you can make a lot better choices for yourself, even as you biologically obviously age. So I think that's definitely a positive aspect to getting older, to being able to influence weight loss. There is many other factors, but I'll leave it with that. So
Yeah, because I was going to say, Tommy, I'm going to play like devil's advocate on that. And we were saying with a lot of the positive experiences, there's definitely another side to that, which we're going to go into, but I want to bring it first back around to the metabolism. So what we actually basically know now is like our metabolism doesn't really slow down until we get to about 60 years old. So really, your metabolism hasn't slowed down, you have. And if you're offended by that, I'm sorry. But we can all be slightly offended, take offense to that. But I'm going to explain to you why that is. So firstly, I want to ask you guys a question. When you guys were 10 years old and you used to go to your friend's house to play, what did you do?
Run around
Tons of
outside.
energy.
Yeah. Usually playing outside.
Yeah. I was hoping you'd say that and not say go drinking. That's around 13 and 14, not 10 years old. So, yeah, right? When you're a kid, what do you do when you go to a friend's house, right? You play. You go outside, you run around, you go nuts. When you're older, what do we do nowadays? You sit down, Mary cranks open the wine, she pours the glass, and then you say you're only going to have one. Jesus board comes out, you end up having the second, then you say, "Feck it, nuts are healthy anyway, aren't they?" Whole bag of nuts gone. Then you wake up the next day, bit of a groggy head, and you're like, God, that happened again. So what has happened there is the kid tried, you're burning a ton of energy. As adults, we're consuming a lot. We're not moving. We're not moving as much. And that's like one example, but in general life, we just don't move as much as we used to. Even we have more sedentary jobs than we did. So that's the first thing. Second one is stress. We stress a lot more as we get older. Again, when you're a kid, what are you worried about when you're like 10? You know, I was worried about getting to the next level of NBA 2K10. That was my like stress in life. Was being able to complete that on expert or whatever the highest level was. Nowadays, your finances, your career, your house, your kids, you have so much more on your plate as you get older. That has a huge effect, and it's something obviously we're going to talk about multiple times in this podcast is stress. But we stress a lot more than we used to. And often what's a caused response to stress? Food. The next one is sleeping. We sleep less. So when we're a kid, most of us, we're getting like 9-10 hours sleep. I can't tell you the last time I got 9 or 10 hours sleep that without being like unconscious or something for some reason. And even in research, there's actually, we're just sleeping less over time as a society. In 1959, from age 40 to 79, the average sleep was 8 hours per night, with 15% of people reporting that they slept less than 7 hours. So in 2002, 40 years later, we reported that we were sleeping 7 hours a night. So it gone down from 8 hours to 7. But there was a 33% increase in people reporting that they sleep less than 7 hours. So that was 2002. I'd gauge what are we, another 20 odd years on? I'd say it's gotten even worse. I'd say we're more towards the 6.5. And I'd say honestly, over 50% of people are probably not sleeping 7 hours. And what's interesting for me is what we know from sleep deprivation or lack of sleep. There's so many knock-on effects on your health. But one is, on average, we consume 200 to 300 more calories a day when we're sleep deprived. And obviously those calories don't come from broccoli. They come from sugary, salty, highly palatable foods. What that turns out to, if we do some quick maths, me and Eve were talking about this in a book today, that, let's say 200 calories extra a day, adds up to about 1,400 calories per week, which is 5,600 calories per month, which is about, ballpark, about 1.5 pounds. That adds up to about 18 pounds or something like that across the year. When I talk to a lot of people who gain weight, on average, it's about a stone a year, which turns to just over a pound a month, which I find very funny that it basically correlates very closely to being sleep deprived versus the amount of weight that people tend to gain. And I thought that was just very, very interesting. And that's just for me, myself, talking to a lot of people, that's kind of that weight gain that happens. Stone a year, about a pound a month, and it's quite unnoticeable, which is the hard thing. So when it comes to metabolism, yeah, has it really slowed down, or are we just moving less, consuming more, sleeping less, stressing more? Thoughts?
think when it comes to metabolism as well, it's that perpetual dieting thing that always ends up happening. People aren't taking time, it's just they're either on a diet or off a diet, and I think that time that, like we would encourage our clients to take, where you're not dieting, but you're still doing the basics, you're still getting that good foundation in place. You're able to eat more, you feel better, you're stronger, and like doing that kind of thing, like getting stronger in the gym, eating more, that is essentially what's going to build up your metabolism. It's going to give you more energy to naturally move more. Especially I know as well with women I work with who are older. It's like as you get older, you do lose muscle. That can be a reason for the weight gain as well, because when you have more muscle, lean muscle mass, you can consume more calories.
I think even also with the sleep, like a lot of people also wear like the fact that they get so little sleep as a badge of honor, do you know? And I think it's because a lot of people are in fight or flight so much that they don't even realize that they're tired and they need to relax. And they're in that like high energy state that they don't even put down their weight gain or any of that to sleep, because they're like, oh, sure, I'm fine. I only had a couple of hours sleep last night, but their body's in such a high state that they're not even putting those two things together.
I think with sleep as well, I know how important it is. I think everybody knows we have to sleep, but they don't really know. It's kind of like, I don't really think people are educated enough on sleep, because do look at it. It is like, kind of crazy how much sleep affects. It's kind of, I look at it like the master key to health. It's like good sleep opens up the doors to absolutely everything else. Everything else functions better, like you all know. If you've ever done night shifts or had a full night of sleep deprivation, you will understand what that feels like. So good sleep literally opens the doors to every other aspect of health and makes it easier. Poor sleep, literally, I always look at it like, it's like fighting with your body or against it. When you're sleeping well, you're going with your body. When you're not, you're against it. Everything's.
I think also people don't actually know what good sleep is, because even here now, like there's so many people that will have an espresso at 10 p.m. and then they're like, oh, coffee doesn't affect me. I fall asleep. And I'm like, that's not proper sleep. You're closing your eyes and you might shut off for a couple of hours, but your body is not recovering. And I think that's the thing. People don't realize that like there's so much different like levels of sleep. They think like, oh, when their eyes are shut and they wake up the next morning, they got 8 hours of solid sleep, when it's like, no, your body didn't actually rest at all.
Sleep, sleep definitely is such an important factor for people to be aware of. It's like you talked about cooning, that person, Mary, who has the wine, who has the cheese board, and then more than likely ends up watching TV late or is on their phone late, eating late. All that and all that, those choices are stemming from, she's probably really stressed, but those choices then are impacting what you've all talked about, is sleep. And like I always say to clients the whole time, is like, for me, sleep is the most important factor in our lives. It is the foundation of how we move and how we operate and function in the world, because a lot of people these days are consuming so much information through their phones late at night, when, like Rose was saying, our body's sleep is not just you close your eyes. There's a process to actually beginning to sleep, and that's meant to be a relaxing process. Your nervous system is meant to be relaxed before you go to sleep. And a lot of people are going to sleep stressed because of their scrolling social media, and it's detrimental to their health. And like sleep has such an important role in our lives, because we process experiences while we're asleep. That's like what dreams are about. Our dreams are just a manifestation of what's happening in our conscious, and that's actually a process that is actually allowing us to heal. And a lot of people don't don't get to that stage in sleep, that REM sleep. I think it's the third stage, because they're stressed, they've eaten late, so many different factors. You know, it's like you said, then you wake up the next day and you're feeling like shit, and you're like, oh my god, you know, and then you're continuing that process then throughout the next day.
Caffeine. First thing.
Yeah, exactly.
That,
Stress from the body, it's mainly just for repeating the loop, aren't you?
and I think I actually want to ask you something, Tommy, that on the next point, but just to finish that on sleep is, I definitely think the phone is the worst thing that nowadays, especially now, and it's only getting worse. And it's like, just one of those things that we just do not realize how much of an effect it's having on us, and then also how addictive it is. And you said it with sleep. Like, I look at sleep as a 24-hour thing. So like from the moment you wake up, there's things that are going to affect your sleep that night. Sunlight in the morning, movement, fresh air, exercise, the food you eat, like everything you're doing throughout the day is kind of, your body works on clocks, right? Like internal body clocks with like 24 hours. And this is why when you do night shifts and that, you get so all over the place. So like literally from the moment you wake up, your body is doing all these activities in sync to then know in the evening, even your stress hormones, like your cortisol is meant to rise throughout the morning, again, because you're active, you're doing stuff. And then it's meant to start to decrease in the evening as your sleep hormone, melatonin, increases. And then, so that's where, you know, you're meant to be energetic during the day. Then as the evening comes in, we're meant to start winding down, melatonin comes up, we start to feel sleepy. But the problem is with social media and the phone's blue light is that's blocking the melatonin. And then for most of us, we're stressed off our head. So the thing is, the hormones are turned upside down. Your cortisol is actually rising in the evening through all this stress. And then your melatonin is getting blocked. And that's why you're physically exhausted, but you're tired, but wired. You're mentally there in bed. Physically, you're like, oh God. Mentally, you're just having like two monkeys with two cymbals. That's what happens to people. And again, that's a whole process. And this is, the name of this podcast is lifestyle. It's encompassing everything you're doing, you know?
But I even noticed that even myself with going to sleep at night, like I'll try and put my phone away like an hour before I plan on sleeping. And I notice those evenings, like I'm slowly winding down. And when I get to bed, within 10 minutes, I'm asleep. Whereas the evenings where I have my phone in front of me, I put my head down and I can almost feel my thoughts just like bouncing around the place. They're not shutting down. And it takes me so much longer to get to sleep. And it's down to me being on my screen too close to bedtime.
I can't remember where I heard it as well. It's like your brain doesn't know the difference between a phone light or like the artificial lights, whether it be at work or around the house. So that if they're on, your brain is like, oh, I should be on. It's daylight. It's bright outside. So it's like, even I know for myself, on a Wednesday evening, I work late and I just put on the blue light blockers. But when I don't put them on, or if I bring my phone, you know, if I'm on my phone too late, I know my sleep that night just is not going to be good.
With that, so the next point I actually want to bring up, just to bring it back around, this is one, I think that a lot of people, when it comes to losing weight as you get older, that question, is it harder to lose weight as you get older? I think this is something that people don't really know about or even think, and it's your beliefs. And you said this, Tommy, you mentioned this. This is why I want you on this case. So the thing is, right, the way I look at this is a lot of the beliefs, like you said, positive things, because we have these experiences and knowledge built up. But on the opposite side, some of us have a lot of negative beliefs around weight loss, around ourselves. And that's where I look at it. Like when you look at an 18-year-old versus a 40-year-old, that's 40-year-old could have 20 years extra of these limiting beliefs or negative thought patterns or approaches to weight loss, and also even failures. They might have failed for the last 20 years. I think that creates a huge barrier to success, you know. And also, and then on top of that, if we look at age, right, like say a 40-year-old now, like 20 years ago, 30 years ago, people's beliefs around nutrition, their education was a lot different than it is now. Like, if you look back to, I wouldn't say, 20 years ago is only the thousands now. I feel like 20 years ago is the 80s. I'm old. Yeah, but you look back then, it's like, remember all the nutritional knowledge, and that was so poor back then, so that people have probably carried that through now, compared to maybe in 40 years' time. The younger generation now may have a lot better knowledge, understanding going forward, when they're 40. So how much do you think that kind of plays a role, Tommy, just out of interest?
Huge, huge role. I think the example I've given them, like an 18-year-old to a 40-year-old, like there's an extra 20 years of life experiences of someone who maybe doesn't feel good enough about themselves, doesn't feel worthy enough, doesn't feel loved, and they're walking around and living by these rules and assumptions which create these automatic negative thoughts for us on a daily basis. And it's kind of like, often you see that kind of photo of someone in a boat, and there's a hole in the boat, and they're trying to throw the water out of the boat using a bucket, but there's still loads of water coming in. That's essentially the kind of analogy I like to use. And when people who try to lose weight but aren't aware of like their limiting beliefs, or they're not aware of how they function in the world, they're not aware of their thoughts. And that's why mindset work is so important, is to be able to allow people an opportunity to be able to explore what they believe, what their limiting beliefs are. Because if someone is trying to lose weight but they have these negative limiting beliefs about themselves, well, they're more than likely just going to stay on the same loop that they have been repeating for the last 20 years. But it is very fulfilling for that person when they can actually understand, oh yeah, this is actually what I believe about myself. And then from there, then that they can actually be able to go and be able to change their thought process, change how they feel about themselves, and essentially then change their behaviors, which then will allow them to sustain and maintain weight loss itself, or whatever goals that they want to achieve. But it is valuable and important. I think it's kind of that age bracket, the 30s, the 40s, the 50s, like that demographic would have never really have known anything about limiting beliefs, or their essentially the self-awareness about how they feel or how they think, just because the information wasn't there and it wasn't available. Whereas now, obviously, like I said earlier, the information is out there. It's just about getting people to, one, wanting to take on that knowledge, and two, then being able to do something about it.
Yeah, I think even what you were saying, it's like a lot of people get fixated on the physical weight loss, but there's like emotional and mental weight loss. And I think it's easier I guess it's a little bit more straightforward to physically lose weight. It's like move more, eat less, but people forget about the whole emotional weight loss to it, and actually like dealing with your emotions, because the majority of people, especially even Irish people, we were never taught how to fully process emotions and feelings. And a lot of us would have turned to food in stressful situations, and that's a comfort. And if you're not addressing that, then anytime you do get overwhelmed, if you are constantly dieting, like Sharon was saying, people feel like they constantly have to be working on losing physical weight. But if you even take a break at working on the physical side of things and actually looked at the mental side and the emotional side and dealt with that, in the long run, it would be like an even keel, and you'd keep the weight off because you're also dealing with the emotional side of things.
I heard something the other day on a podcast, kind of just linked to what you said, Ro, but it's like if people worked as hard on themselves and their mindset and their beliefs as what they think they need to work in the gym, they'd be far more successful. I thought I was like, yeah, makes loads of sense.
So true. That's always what I think I recorded this with you before. I was like, my whole thing was I was working out when I should have been working in. So I was working out for years, and it was like building this armor. and it gets to a point where, yeah, you have to do the inner work, which is funny because even me saying that, when I look back at myself 10 years ago, if I would have said that, I'd be like, you're an idiot. Like, what have you done with your life? But it really is. And Tommy, you had mentioned it, and I had said it, like, and I was thinking, like, nutrition knowledge wasn't 20, 30 years ago, wasn't anywhere near what it is now. But mindset was even worse. Like, mindset didn't even exist. Nutrition knowledge existed, but it was pretty poor. But some people were doing some of the right things without even knowing what they were doing, those old bodybuilders. But mindset, was even, I think it's still only in its infancy now. It's only getting to be normalized, I think, the last few years.
Yeah, but even I think for us growing up, like counseling and therapy, or like, in school, if you went to the counselor, there was something wrong with you. You were crazy, or there was, it had such a bad stigma around it that, like, the idea of talking about your feelings was just not heard of. And so I spent, like, our generation, but the older generation is even like, they never spoke about their feelings or emotions, or thought that was even, like, there was benefits to that. Like, because if you did, there was something wrong with you rather than you're actually doing the right thing. Do you know?
I think as well, going back to the beliefs, that's where I was just thinking, you'll notice it with a lot of people who are, again, in their 40s and 50s. So many people, and 30s, have these beliefs that, one, like, carbs are bad, two, sugar is bad, and it's very hard to get them out of that. And I know from coaching them, it's like the amount of times that people say, I think I'm eating too many carbs to me, and I'm like, is it sweet potato and potato that's killing you? Like, no, it's actually not. It's what? Sugary foods that are high in fat, salt, really easy to overconsume. And it's just you overconsuming calories. And the problem with these type of beliefs is you can create evidence that you think makes it true. So a lot of people will cut carbs, they'll lose weight. But that's because they're not eating as many calories and they're cutting a lot of water weight. A lot of people cut out sugar and they'll lose weight. That's just because they're consuming less calories. And now humans don't tend to actually replace things, we eliminate it. So, but to the person, it's like, yeah, when I cut sugar, I lose weight. It's like, no, not really. You think that's happening, So it's hard. It's very easy to teach someone what a calorie deficit is. It's very hard to take someone's belief and change it,
Absolutely. And I think that's why, nutritional knowledge is so important. And it was something that Eve shared, in the Facebook group last week, was about food. I think I'm going to pronounce this word right. Satiety. Satiety. I don't know how to pronounce that, but
Satiety index.
thanks, Eve. And I'm sure Eve will tell you a lot more about it, but that was actually only a word that I only recently learned about in the summer from that book, The Magic Pill. And, like, it's these type of foods that we're eating that actually, like, what's the actual goal of food is, or one of the goals anyway, is to make you full. And a lot of the foods that we're eating, as I'm sure Eve will touch on, is like these foods that we're eating, they don't make us feel full. And they're doing the opposite, so they are.
Yeah, and I definitely think as well with that, people don't realize that. And obviously, like Matt was saying earlier, food these days is really high calorie, highly palatable. So, like, you can get a bag of crisps, could be 1,000 calories, and very easy to kind of eat that, and you're still hungry 10 minutes later. Whereas if you're making better choices, getting more like bang for your buck with calories, you can choose more filling options and actually eat less calories as well. So even like that with the food satiety index, potatoes are actually one of the most filling options, and they're one of, like, the best foods on that satiety index. And people don't realize that. People think that whenever I say to clients that, okay, maybe let's add some potatoes in, they're kind of like, would have always had that belief that potatoes are spuds, can't be eating them, or I need to cut them out to lose weight. But they're actually probably one of the best foods you could add in if you want to lose weight, because, like, you can get a pretty big portion, small amount of calories, and it's going to keep you fuller for longer because, it's high. It's a big portion for that smaller amount of calories as well.
potatoes been absolutely crucified over the years. They're like, I'm telling you, I wanna start a petition, be like, free the spud. It's they've been crucified. But
Fingers and mash.
yeah, with me, my spud's head. So last thing actually, what I want to share is so a belief I used to have was it's actually opposite of weight loss. I couldn't gain weight when I was younger. I had a belief that I had fast metabolism and I couldn't gain weight. I had that for years, honestly. And I definitely proved myself wrong when I actually ate, ate enough calorie. I was very active. I don't have a fast metabolism. It's about average. I was just very active and I didn't really consume that much food naturally. So when I actually started tracking calories, I still had this belief. Honestly, this is even in my 20s. And then I went and gained 33 pounds by like eating 4.5, 5,000 calories and got really one of those dreamer bugs, really fat. And like, I was not looking at myself, but I was seeing the scales go up and and then I looked at myself one day, I was like 190 pounds. And I was like, what have I done? That was it. So that blew my belief. And I was like, okay, no, I don't have that fast metabolism. I can gain weight, especially when you're eating ice cream daily in a blender, but my question to you guys is, does anyone here want to share any beliefs that they had at one time that maybe they've proved themselves wrong?
I definitely would have thought before that, like, I wasn't able to lose weight and that I had a slow metabolism. Probably spent like most of my life thinking that. But I think for me, the problem was I was never consistent for long enough. So I'd like start a diet. I'd be maybe probably overly restrictive, not seeing the results fast enough and just saying, oh, fuck this. I can't lose weight. It doesn't work. And then I'd give up. And then I'd just be going around in circles and not understanding that it takes time and patience and, consistency. I know that we all say that consistency, but it really is the number one thing. Like,
I'm probably
Just
the same there.
Just to mention, sorry, on Eve as well, is like, we'll probably do a podcast on this. Not a problem. A thing that makes it hard for you, Eve, is weight loss, as in the scales, because you're one of those people that could go 6 weeks without seeing a change on the scales. And that's not a typo. Listen to that. 6 weeks, not 6 days, people. 6 weeks with no decrease, but then you'll see it. So again, like, that's a very hard thing for somebody. Most people can't go 5 days if they don't see the decrease. They're like, this is bullshit. Take me out here, So that's that kind of, and Tommy, you mentioned that, like, strengthened your belief would be not seeing that, which is like, and I wouldn't say it's common, but it's definitely, I've seen it with a lot of other like women like that, but it's just something I wanted to mention. Sorry, Ro, I cut in.
No, I was just going to say the same as Eve. Like, I think went through all the standard beliefs that carbs are bad, that I couldn't lose weight, but it was the constant yo-yo dieting. But I think it also comes down to people's self-worth. Because if you have a low self-worth, you're going to think that the time you're giving yourself in the gym, you're not worthy of that time. The effort you're putting into your diet, you're not worthy of putting that effort in. And then if you don't start seeing results straight away, then you're like, I'm wasting time on myself. And then you end up going back in the yo-yo. And that was something for me. I was like, you wouldn't see the results. And then I'm like, I should be doing other things with my time than focusing on me. And then you fall back into the cycle. Or people love looking for external, like you were saying, external excuses to justify why it's not working out rather than going inwards. So carbs are bad. This workout doesn't work, too many calories. They're just external excuses rather than admitting that they need to look inwards.
Definitely think I would be the same as Roisin and Eve in terms of all those beliefs that, everyone, I think a lot of women would have. A massive one, and I was only thinking about this the other day, is there were trigger foods. And I think when I had the aha moment, it's like, there's not trigger foods. You were triggered and food is your response. When I learned that, when I learned to manage stress better, when I kind of learned better ways of dealing when I was triggered or stressed or tired or emotional, the same food could be there and it wouldn't have the same effect.
Yeah, I definitely think what you were saying as well, like a lot of people will say, oh, I can't have biscuits in the house, I'll just eat the whole packet. Or, there'll be certain foods like that that people will try to cut out. And, they might even check in and be like, I just need to cop on and stick to my diet. But you actually need to work on your stress management, and that's get to the root cause of why you can't stick to your diet. It's not the food that's the problem, it's the response, basically, kind of like what you're saying.
I always say that people, it's like food is not the cause, it's the outcome, it's the result. So it's like you need to figure out what the cause is instead of people just try and go like just take away the food. But it's like, no, we need to work on the root cause of the problem. Food is just the result. If we change the root cause, that actually is where you'll see the long-term improvements, because you can only, yes, it is a strategy to limit, highly palatable foods or foods that could be overconsumed, but it's that alone is not enough to change your life. Like, what are you going to do? Just like turn away from croissant shops your whole life, or anytime you see, if you have that food, like somebody comes in, you just turn and run. Like that's not a sustainable long-term strategy. It is definitely usable, but it needs to coincide with, again, looking at the root cause of food being the response. Or I think it's a great point, Sharon.
Yeah. And
Sorry, tell me
just
again.
touching on when you were talking about the beliefs in that, and using like Eve's example of younger, her younger self, about I have a belief that I can't lose weight, and like after a couple of weeks, you don't see any progress. That's what's known as like confirmation bias. So like our minds work off evidence, and if you see that confirmation bias to that belief is like, oh, I actually can't lose weight, so fuck this, and there's no point in me doing this, whereas that's where like the understanding comes in. So it does with that. My own self, it definitely, Matt, is when you said it, I was like, that was 100% me when I was growing up, right up until probably I went to college, that I can't gain weight, my metabolism is so fast, I can eat what I want, I can do what I want, I just couldn't gain weight. And then something kind of in around that time where I kind of started to shift was like, it was basically like my like total lack of knowledge with food, and like me like thinking that for me to gain weight, that like I had to eat like just rice and chicken every single day. And I don't mean like chicken from the butchers, it was like processed chicken. And I remember like my meal that I used to have like nearly every single day was like white rice, processed chicken, and curry sauce. And that was like, even though when I even said that, I was like, oh my God, how did I even do that for weeks upon weeks?
Years. Then I was going to say, you definitely you went to America on a J1 then and proved yourself very wrong.
That's like the funniest. If you look at the photo of me at the beginning of that holiday to the end of that holiday, two different people.
That's like 3 months of American food, portion sizes, and I think you were doing the J1 life as well. It wasn't like you were just trying to survive and have fun more so than look after your health was not a priority, I suppose, that for those 2 months.
Absolutely in total neglect.
So the next one I had with people getting older and maybe struggling to lose weight, or is it being harder, is habits. So again, going back to someone who's 20 versus 40, it's a lot harder to break a habit that you've had for 30, 40 years than it is when you're younger. You can kind of break habits a lot easier. And I think where I know myself, definitely, as I've gotten older, I'm very much more resistant to change. Example, me and Eve bought iPhones months ago. I still haven't changed my iPhone. I'm so comfortable with the Samsung, and I'm not going to now. I'm using the iPhone for content. I'm not changing because I can't text. I'm just so resistant to it. So I can, yeah, I'm an example of those habits that have been ingrained. Samsung, you've got me, but that's what I think it is quite hard to learn new habits when you're older. And Sharon mentioned at the start, again, priorities are different as you get older. There's probably less time taking in the beliefs that we said. It can be a lot harder to build new habits. And I think this society is part of this as well, is like alcohol. We drink more as we get, well, I actually drank more when I was younger, but let's not talk about that. So in general, society drinks more as you get older. We eat out more. And there's actually some stats on this. So since the 60s, meals eaten outside the home have increased. Convenience food has increased. Portion sizes have increased dramatically. So there's less people having home cooked meals. And again, that all leads to a lot easier to overconsume food. And then also going back to moving less is like between 1950 and the year 2000, sedentary occupations rose from 23% to 41%. And I would, again, that was 20 years ago, I would say that's probably over 50 versus we all had a lot more jobs where we weren't sitting at a computer talking to each other like we are now. So yeah, anyone with the habit change, any views on it?
I think as humans, we always look more so to the negative than the positive. So like even the thought of changing a habit, a lot of people are like, oh, I can either stick with what I know right now, or I can try and make a change, but what if it doesn't work out? Rather than looking at what if it does work out? What if this little bit of effort actually benefits me more but they'll always look at like, oh, it's probably not going to work out. So I won't even bother changing my lifestyle. And I think it's easier to do that.
And I think as well with habits, people try to do too much too soon. Whereas like if you just want to try build a new habit, like start small and then get consistent with it and then like increase it over time rather than trying to do like a big massive overhaul, which you probably can do for like a week, 2 weeks, and then, you fall out of routine with it because I definitely see that with like a lot of clients that they might start with us and, they're not doing any workouts and they start with us and you get them to start with 2 workouts and they come back to you and they're like, I did 4 workouts last week. This is unreal. Like I'm training 4 days a week and it is great. You're training, but you're not going to be able to sustain that 4 days a week. And you're probably better off doing 2 workouts. Get consistent with that. If you're getting consistent with that, then for a couple of weeks, couple of months, then we could look to maybe increase it. But trying to go from 0 to 100, you'll just kind of burn out quickly.
Yeah, I think this is. Oh, go on, Sharon.
I was just going to say, I think that maybe the time that people try to put their new habits in place mightn't be the best time. So like, I know for me, I'll never try adding in September. I'll never try adding in January, that they are going to be like way too busy to be adding anything in. So what I do is I get them in before I know things are going to get busy. So I can get consistent with it. Like, just for example, like September is going to be busy, but over the summer it is that little bit slower because there's no school, there isn't that pressure. So I know if I want to get something in, I get it done over those months because it is a better time to start something. And like Eve said, just keeping it simple when you are putting in a good habit.
Yeah, I was going to touch on, it's actually the exact same time as you, Sharon. Like September and January, people like think, okay, I'm going to do everything now. I'm becoming a new person. And they try and do 110 things all at once. And they end up burning themselves out. Because September and January are meant to be slower seasons. You're meant to slow down. And that's why I kind of use those months as like a trial and error to like slowly get myself back up, figure out what, if I'm taking on new habits and like not have that pressure on myself. And it's something we said in the Empower Hour, like to just slowly get back into it. don't try and do like 110 things at once.
It's so interesting that they're supposed to be slower months, whereas for most people, they're probably easier months.
Mm.
And I think we're all on the same point, because even when Eve said that, I literally just wrote a note about like small habits versus extreme. And I think that's the big, people are just unaware of how small things can make such a big difference. I think we all believe it has to be extreme. So it's like, you know, you have to go from wine drinking pizza lord on Sunday to chicken rice broccoli on Monday. And instead of looking at it from just a small habit, like the smallest change over time. And I talked about earlier with the sleep cycle, like everything in the day sets you up. Small habits compound, and they also have a domino effect. So again, often if you just sleep a little better, you're going to move more. So you might actually go out for a walk without meaning to. So you might move better. If you move better, if you walk more, you come back, you get fresh air, you're in a good mood. Maybe now you'll actually do an extra activity around the house, or the child isn't irritating you as much. The partner, you're like, oh, actually, I like you today, instead of not being able to look at you. Do you know? So, and then that leads to it. And then you have a better relationship. And then, so it's all these little things that compound, that start from just one habit, instead of going, and I said this to a client this week, because he was like, oh, I need to get into it. And I read it back to him. I was like, you just listed 19 things you needed to do. I was like, that exhausted me reading it. There's no way you're going to, and you're currently parked. You're currently not moving. So that's like, you know, let's just get the key in the ignition and just move. Just do one thing, and then let the rest of it come back. So I think it's a huge, and often then when we do a small thing, we feel like we're not doing enough, or we should be doing more. Like you said, even with the workouts, like it is, you wouldn't realize how little you can do to see positive changes if done consistently enough over time.
Yeah, like being consistent with 2 workouts per week for the whole year, compared to trying to do stints of, 3, 4, 5 workouts, and doing that for 2 or 3 weeks, burning yourself out, not going to the gym for a month, and then going back again and trying to do another 3 to 4 workouts again. And you're just, whereas if you were, and each time you start back in the gym then as well, you're basically spending a week or two to get back into it. So you're never really consistent long enough to actually be able to make progress.
And it doesn't become a habit.
Funny, isn't it? You know, like you were saying, start of the podcast, that people kind of can underestimate how 200 to 300 calories a day can cause like stone weight gain in a year. And it's like then the opposite for the habits. It's like, okay, smaller habits done consistently will have a massive compound effect in a year.
I think again, I think it all comes back to self-worth, and people's have such low self-worth that the thought of going slow and slowly building habits means spending more time on myself that I'm not worthy of. So they try and jam pack it all into something really quick so they can spend less time on working on themselves because they feel like they're not worthy of the time. And then it ends up failing and they're like, oh, see, I knew it anyway. So I'm not worth it. It's like, get over it. Let's try something else. Whereas it's because then those little habits become just part of your lifestyle and they're not actually a chore that you have to do. They're like something that just naturally happens once you get over that little bridge.
And I think another point on the habit is a lot of people are afraid to fail. So they have a fear of fucking up, essentially. And we're always going to, and especially with habits, it's like, I know, yes, the goal is to do them consistently forever, but that's not going to be the case for probably any habit because life happens. And also, time. You might have the time to do all these. So it's, instead of looking at it from like a good or bad, or I fail or I succeed point of view, it's just should be a continuous process of trying to build these better habits. Sometimes a habit will take a back seat. For example, with people, could be journaling, could be gratitude, and you might do it all year round, but it's like getting consistent with it, seeing the benefit of it, and then maybe over time you go, okay, I need to bring this habit back in because I can see myself slipping or I'm more stressed. So that way it's like, I look at habits like a toolbox. It's like you want to build that over time. Some of them, yes, you keep forever. They're just things you do each day, but others can be interchanged. And it might be a thing of like, oh, I couldn't keep consistent with this. Instead of beating yourself up, it's just like, why? Maybe that habit, like Sharon said, maybe it's the wrong time, maybe it's the wrong habit. And then it's like, okay, let's try something else, instead of was that extreme all or nothing, I failed or I succeeded type of approach.
It's learning. Why did you fail? Why did you fuck up? Next time you do it, fail a little less. You are going to keep doing it. You've been doing something a certain way for far longer than you've been doing it the way you want to do it.
I think so. Also acknowledging how good the habit makes you feel. Like actually taking a moment to be like, wow, I feel so much better now that I have this. Because a lot of times people take on habits and they just keep doing them, assuming like that's what you're meant to do, rather than being like, holy shit, I feel so good. I feel so good when I do this habit. And something I do when I'm trying to get a new habit in is I like exaggerate how good it makes me feel. So when I find myself slipping or not going to do that habit, I can pull up the memory of, wow, no, I know how good this will make me feel if I stick to it.
She really liked that strategy, and it's because, like you said, I think it changes the perspective of it. And it's like, instead of this thing, because often what happens is like people look at training or steps or whatever, it's like a burden. It's like, oh, I have to work out instead of I get to, because I know I feel great after it, So I think I think that's really good, is to actually over exaggerate how good the thing makes you feel. Because you're kind of giving, like we said, you're giving yourself feedback that it's like, this is a great thing, I need to do it. You'll want to do it then.
I used to do it with cold showers. I'd resist getting into the cold shower, but then afterwards I'd like scream and be like, oh my God, I'm so refreshed. I feel so good. And then the next morning when I feel that resistance, I remember how good it made me feel the morning before. And so it just got quicker and quicker. And then the resistance kind of left.
It's all about building up your tolerance to it. We talked about this, people's baseline tolerance to stress and where it's at. And people just aren't able to, once a stressful experience comes upon us, people just aren't able to react to it in the right way, because number one, they're just not able to actually handle stress. And number two is because they're actually just chronically stressed. And things like the cold water, even weight training, anything that is going to put your nervous system into like a sympathetic state, but consciously do it, consciously doing it. I'm doing this at my own free will. What you're doing is you're building up your tolerance then to that stress. It's like Matt, when you did your ice bath over in Dubai, you hadn't done one in ages, and you were only able to get into it for, what was it, like 90 seconds, and we were in Bali, it was like 10 minutes.
That first, and I didn't even sink myself down, and then I to do it again.
So that's it. That's where like the consistency comes in with it. You're increasing your tolerance to stress, and you're better equipped to be able to handle it when it does appear in your life.
Yeah. I think to come back around, there's kind of two more points. I'm wary of time, because I think we could actually do a 4-hour podcast on this kind of topic. The next one I want to touch on, because I think we have to kind of touch on it, is like, as you get older, there's hormonal changes. I'm not going to go deep in here because we could go, as we look. We may do it in another episode if people are interested. Obviously, females have menopause, and you'll have a lot more hormonal changes as you age. But males also, we have a reduction in testosterone, and both males and females, Sharon, you mentioned it, they have age-related muscle loss. So we start to lose muscle as we get older, and that really has an effect. And this is why we're such high proponents of weight training. Is weight training and high protein diet can protect you essentially against losing muscle mass, and just quality of life, quantity. The most common thing I think is frailty, like people falling and dying is like the most common way. So like having stronger bones, muscles, joints, all going to be really, really beneficial for that. But those obviously hormonal changes have an impact on us. And we definitely, I feel like, Sharon, you mentioned this, is like people can't get away with unsustainable approaches and what I would, naive may be the bad word, but approaches that are not very smart. A lot of people go on this an extreme calorie deficit where they're maybe not even weight training. They just a restrictive diet, low protein, all these crazy diets out there that are very restrictive. It's not even that you can do that. You probably shouldn't do that when you're younger anyway, but you can get away with it versus when you're older. Again, you're going to increase the chances of you losing muscle mass. And it's like, I gave you this, I think, Sharon, we talked about this in Marbella. I was like, if you take somebody, your average person, right, who's dieting, that yo-yo dieter over time, and if they diet this way, where it's extreme restriction, no weight training, low protein diet, let's say they lose 20 pounds, high amount of that is going to be lean muscle mass. So we could look at let's say 40% could be lean muscle. And then, so they're losing 12 pounds fat, 8 pounds of muscle or something. This is just numbers just taken out. They gain back to 20 pounds. They're probably gaining back way more body fat, 20 pounds of body fat. You repeat this cycle over 5 diet, and a lot of people again will lose 20, gain back 25. You do this cycle 5 times over your life. Most I think women in America diet twice a year on average. So this is just I'm going on the lower side. 5 times. You probably lost a lot of muscle mass, gained a lot of body fat. And it's why you might even notice at the same body weight over years, you kind of look worse if you are taking that approach, And then that has, again, we know more body fat, less muscle mass equals more chances of health risks, complications, which again can make weight loss harder, or we need to take a more appropriate approach for that person in terms of the right type of diet, more focus on quality of your calories, not just calories, high protein, weight training, sleep, stress management, all the good things we talked about already today. And it's why we're talking about them, But that's where I think for a lot of people, yes, they'll definitely understand there is hormonal changes, but there's also strategies that can help during that time,
Yeah, and I definitely think the basics done right and the basics done consistently. I know we keep kind of going back to this, but as you get older, if it's getting significantly harder to get results, because especially for women, going through perimenopause with, disrupted sleep, lower mood, increased hunger, lower energy levels, you're just everything will feel worse when your hormones are fluctuating. And if you're trying to do something like crazy restricted diet, you're going to find it very hard to get results. You're going to just feel even worse. So you're already going through a time where you're struggling with symptoms, you're feeling bad, and then you're trying to do something that's pretty much impossible. And then you feel like you failed because you can't stick to it. And it's just this vicious cycle then where, it's just, you're not going to get results. So I think it needs to be brought back to that doing the basics, being consistent. It needs to be sustainable for you. And the best treatment for menopausal symptoms is going to be, lifestyle changes. And this is backed by research as well. It's not just what we're saying. It's actually backed by research.
Name of the podcast for a reason.
That's go on, Jen.
Think as well, when people think of I know I would have, but when you think of menopause, you think of way older woman. I don't know. I just used to always think that, and I remember I went to talks. They were doing seminars on menopause, perimenopause, and menopause can start from not for everyone, but for some women, menopause can start like in around 40, 45, and perimenopause can start from 10 years before. So it's like really, you know, the younger you can improve your lifestyle, the better it is going to be as your hormones are changing and as you are getting older.
That's what we kind of spoke about as well, is like with the habit change and the lifestyle, that it's setting, it gets harder like as you get older, but not because like it's harder to lose weight. It's just harder to make those changes. You know, it's like, when was the best time to plant a tree? Is that the saying? It's like 20 years ago. It's like the best time is today or yesterday. Was it? Basically, like, yeah, it's like the earlier you start, the easier it is, you know. And it's seven habits. Like if you can set yourself up for your later life. And, you know, that's what I talk about a lot with our clients, anyone that's coming on board for us. I'm like, this is not really about right now. It's what you do now is setting yourself up for the next 10, 20, 30 years. Like, that's our goal and mission, is the quality of your life for the next 30 years. It's not for you to lose 10 pounds in 8 weeks, which is great. But realistically, we want you to do it in a way that you develop the skills that, again, is going to improve the quality and quantity of your life, which then compounds onto your kids and family and everyone else around you. And then you become a role model. They live healthier. And then the next person down, and it becomes this domino effect, which is the mission, you know?
Yeah, and I think that's,
go on.
yeah, and I think that's why that's so important, what we do, what we offer, Cooney, you know, is when we look at that integrated approach of the physical, the lifestyle, the nutrition, and the mindset, it is covering all bases of the lifestyle choices that you make in life, and how all these different pillars of your life can really either add to your life or take away from your life. And that's why, you know, we focus in on these different aspects of our life that can really improve your health. And like you said, it isn't just about losing 10, 15 pounds. It is about being able to live a longer, more healthier life that will essentially allow you to live a happier life.
Yeah, that's what I say. I think we've the education now, whereas like back then, though, it wasn't about like prolonging your life. It was about the there in the moment, and it was men and women, not like different ages. You know, when women just had to lose weight and men were trying to gain weight, and they didn't really take into consideration what age group you are and like to prolong your life. Like, I remember, even wasn't there ads for sugar was a way of like not eating, or like they're promoting cigarettes as like a different meal, like a separate meal. Like, that's how fucked the media and advertising was back then.
There was a Marlboro ad that was like a doctor smoking a cigarette, and it's like a Marlboro a day is good for you, or something like that.
Yeah.
So we've come a long way from that, really.
Marlboro a day.
No, they actually used the tobacco industry used to market cigarettes to doctors. Like, if you actually look, if you could go on probably YouTube and check out videos of, like, you'd be in getting an X-ray and your doctor would be smoking a cigarette beside you. That was like back in the 60s. So that, like, to tell you where they thought health was.
I just imagine, like, you walk into the office and he's there, his feet up on the table, and he just flicks open the fag box. So you just take a bag, and then tap on your blood.
But also sugar. I remember seeing some old clips from newspapers around sugar, and how sugar it increased your metabolism, so you wouldn't have to eat as much food. And it was this like crazy headlines to do with sugar. But yeah, back then it was just about lose weight or gain muscle, and health wasn't taken into consideration.
I think as well, we could definitely stay talking about these this for hours, but I think we should come back around and wrap it up. So I think we covered a lot today, and to answer the question, does weight loss get harder as you get older? Shall answer. I would say yes, it can, but not for the reasons that we think. And it's not your metabolism. It's more to do with your habits, your lifestyle, and your beliefs. And it's important for everybody here to know is that it's still possible. The principles, fat loss, are the same regardless of age, regardless of all these other factors. People can still lose weight. People can get healthier. People can build muscle in your 70s. If you haven't trained, you can still build muscle by starting. So again, it's never too late to start. And if you just do it the right way and take the right approach, it's going to change your life. Agreed? We have to end it.
Agreed. Here, here.
We're nearly ended it. We have the random question. So at the end of every podcast, I nearly forgot about this today. We have to answer a random question. And this week's question is, it's a good one actually. What's something in your fridge right now that should probably be thrown out?
I actually don't have anything because I did a food shop yesterday. My fridge was empty.
Well, I know for me, Joe is always giving out to me because I'm on it when I see something that's literally coming up to the date. I'm throwing that out. So I have to say, when I think about now, what's in the fridge right now, that there might be some spinach in there that that could be gone out there.
Basically, Tom, you're going to throw everything out of the fridge, even if it doesn't need to be.
Yes, that's what Joe would tell you. So I'm very trigger happy.
Darren, what are we throwing out?
I don't think I've that in there that needs to be thrown out. If I was to have to say something, I have 2 small little Philadelphia cheese, that have been there for ages. They're nowhere near grown off, but other than that, I would keep everything in my fridge.
I think this is a good sign of good habits for all of us. We all have clean fridges. We don't leave crap in there to fester. And what do we have, Eve? Is it a mango? Is that what you said?
Probably the lemons, because they're never going to be used.
Yeah, we got them as a present for the one time I'm having drinks in the house here in 6 months, and they're still in the fridge. So that's probably it. Yeah, lemons, get them out.
I got
And let's mix them over and have a drink.
Yeah, in 3 weeks, hold on to them.
Yeah, gin and tonic.
We'll all be here in 3 weeks. Okay. Guys, thank you for joining us today. It was really enjoyable, and we will see you all in the next one. Thanks for listening to the Future Fitness Lifestyle. If you found value in today's show, please take a moment to leave us a review and share it with someone who could benefit. Every single review or share helps us grow the show and will allow us to keep bringing you more great content. Stay tuned for weekly episodes where we'll be sharing more tips and insights to help you take your health, fitness, and mindset to the next level. If you are interested in joining the MC Future Fitness community to help you achieve your goals, please fill out the application form that will be linked below. Thanks again for joining me, and remember, consistency beats perfection. See you in the next episode.